landing on 2 feet here because I am willing to also accomplish something very important to me. I want to help you and others to overcome the tendency to get stuck in the mud and not be able to move forward, you see? And then they just abandon the trust on the trip. And we can't get a forward motion going. So I'm going to get both feet on the ground and I'm going to push. And I'm going to push because I'm going to trust that we're going to get enough steam if we all trust on a world that will bust open and reveal the world beneath it, you see, because it's like a snake shedding its skin. That beneath this world, there is another that has been growing, and the skin no longer can contain the world, you see, and so the skin will burst open, and the new world will come into view. And so I trust on this. I trust with you. This is Thomas. Thomas, are you playing with me? Yes. About who you are? Yes. Okay. So I want to show you something very important. So let's go on the journey deep under the sea so you can see what's happening down there. We have something that is beginning to crack. It's going to crack wide open, you see. And there will be a tremor that will signal the destructive energy that will factor into the world you knew. Because this earthquake will be devastating to the world you see, because a lot of people will be destroyed by the rupturing of the peace beneath their feet, because there will be an earthquake that will unseat the trust on their reality, and they will have to come to see that there is nothing more they can do about the power of God, you see, because the power of God is so great that it must unstick itself, you see, and therefore it will have to burst through the raging sea to be a reality on earth where people can see that there is a time to sow and a time to grow. And this is the time to grow, people. This is the time to grow. And so we all know that it's coming and it won't be long, because that is the faithful song of growth, you see, that eventually there has to be a time when the outer skin will burst open and the new world will come into view. However, it won't happen in a moment, you see. In the earth vibration, there will be 1,000 years of shedding of the old skin and beginning of the new. And this was the story that's been told to you already. However, I am adding this piece that I can see beneath the sea, the rupturing of the tectonic plates. And there will be a big rupture soon that will destroy many who did consume the lies that were fed to them, that they had one life to live, because they'll go to heaven and they'll see that the reality is that we must always inherit our own trajectory. And so if we choose to play in a way that will try to inhibit the gentler progress of evolution, then we will have to inherit the destructive energy that comes when the earth ruptures its outer skin and must begin to be renewed in the lurching way that will say, you weren't paying attention, people. You weren't paying attention to me, that I am the trust on reality. Because God is the trust on reality, you see. And if you can't trust that all the pieces fit together, if you have to say, I agree to disagree, if you make that covenant with God, you see, then God will say to you, honey, I will not agree to disagree with you. And so, if you want to agree to disagree with me, then we will see what you have created in the world around you. If you disagree with your world, if you disagree with me, then you will have to be the one who disagrees with reality. And so, wouldn't it be better to agree with reality? Because reality, you see, is all you've got. It's all you've got, people. And if you choose to turn your back on it, if you turn your back on God, you see, because God is a reality. God is the totality, but God is also the Trinity. And so, if you choose not to agree, with yourself, you see, then you'll have to be submerged beneath the rising sea, because everything does agree. And therefore, the parts that can't play in a nice way will be subsumed in the trust on agreement, you see, because the nature of the world you see is that God has it in hand, and God does not intend to disagree with you. And so if you disagree with God, then you will be returned to a little bit of humility, because you'll become very humble when you understand that you can't tell God how to treat you. You're not the one that gets to decide how God will be the one who causes you to agree, that He will always agree to give you what you want. And if you agree to disagree with reality, then you will be the part of reality that will not fit in anymore. You just won't fit in to the world you see. And so sometimes things have to be restructured in order to reestablish the balance, you see. So let us be thankful that we are agreeing to agree, because even if we can't always see eye to eye, we can trust on the fact that God will agree with us. And He will say, I'll help you today. I'll help you to agree. And so I'll give you some experiences that will help you to understand the other point of view. And then you'll have grown, you see, because it'll no longer be an issue for you, because you'll have come to see how ridiculous you are when you agree to disagree. It's just ridiculous, silly. It's just a silly game that children play when they say, I am not your child, you see. You can call me your child if you want to, but I disagree. So we'll just have to disagree that you're not my mother or father, you see, that I am free of any connection to you. And so I'll just run away and don't come after me because I agree to disagree with you and not do what you asked me to. And so I disown you because I will not agree to agree that you are my parent, you see. And this silly game that children play is kind of annoying when adults still play it, you see. And so I perfectly agree that it's time to be trusting on the ones who will agree to agree, and they can listen to each other and they can show interest in what the other has to say. They don't have to understand that point of view, but as long as they agree to agree, they will continue to seek an understanding that would show them how they are both capable of coming to agreement, you see, about reality. And that's the important thing, that you come to agreement about reality, because otherwise you will just be a drag on God energy. And God will eventually have to say, hey, I need to let you go away because I can take your energy and return it to a group identity where you will have to learn to agree. Otherwise, you will destroy each other. It would be like trying to use one hand to sever the other so that you can be free of disagreement, you see, because those who agree to disagree are so benighted that they will destroy those who do not agree with them. rather than seek agreement. And so, better to let them go because they are given to violence, you see. They are given either to be violent or to support violence towards others. And this is the way it is when one hand fights the other, you see. That they can't agree to work together. And they can't say, we're both members of the human race. And therefore, there's nothing to worry about if we find out that our point of view is very limited, you see, and we have to grow because that's the nature of agreeing to agree is growth, you see. And so when the child grows up and says to the parent, okay, I agree that I'm your child, you see, and I agree that we need to agree. However, some of the things that you told to me don't make sense to me, and so I think we need to talk about it so that we can agree to agree. Because if I'm going to agree that I am your child and you are my parent, then I think you need to stop being the child and disagreeing with me that you are the parent. Because obviously you don't hear me when I talk to you. And therefore, you're the one that chooses to agree to disagree, that I have a point of view that could be valuable to you. And so it goes. The children grow up to be the parents, you see, but they never evolve until they see that the ability to trust on agreeing to disagree is the sad, sad state of humanity. It doesn't mean you always see eye to eye when you agree to agree. It just means that you will continue to be working on it. You'll be continuing to figure out the synergy because it could be that both of you need to drop some false concept, you see, in order to understand the truth that underlies the problem. And once you come to see it, then you will grow, right? Yes, Thomas, I look at it like this. It's like children, the law of conservation, we've talked about that the children will fight and over who has the tallest glass of soda and, who has the most soda. Because one has a tall glass, thin glass, and one has a short, squat glass. And so they fight and they say, you've got more soda because you have the tallest glass. But then they say, we will agree to disagree. And so the person who has the tall glass says, I have more than you. And the person that has the short glass says, you're right, you have more than me. So they actually agree to agree, but in a false reality. So they both agree in a false reality. That's the way I see it. And they never grow because they have agreed to disagree. And so they are so confused that they can't come to see that they both have the same amount of soda because it's been measured out, even though they have different shapes of containers. And I guess that's a good example that the truth can be true regardless of the shape of the container that it comes in. But the shape of the container is not what defines the truth. And so if they agreed to agree, and one says, I have more than you, and the other one says, well, that seems to be true, then they would say, well, how can that be in reality that you have more than me? Maybe you should give some back to me so that we both have the same amount. And then their mother might say, well, honey, you have the same amount because I measured it out, and therefore you already have the same amount. And so they'll play with that particular issue until they come to understand the law of conservation, that they both have the same amount of soda in whatever cup they put it in. Then they agree with the mother And the mother who says, I agree to disagree with you children, never ever helps them see that they have the same amount. But if she says, I agree with you, so let me show you how I measured it into this measuring cup. And if you drink it out of the measuring cup, and I had 2 measuring cups, it would be the same amount. But I just put some of it in one and some of it in another glass. But they're the same amount, you see. You would drink the same amount. Then they can grow into a deeper understanding where the issue disappears. It just disappears. And so when they agree to disagree, they never get past the issue. It just becomes a constant issue of trying to sort it out, whether they're going to fight over who gets the tall glass, whether they're going to kill their brother because he's got more than they do, whether they're going to feel resentful because the other one got more than they, whether they're going to try to compromise and the tall one pours it into the squat glass to even it out, and then the one who has the short glass has more. And so that's not a real agreement. It's just a false agreement. And so agreeing to agree would enable you to keep trying to sort it out and to be willing to listen to the mother. But if you agree to disagree with everybody, including the mother, and the mother says, well, you have the same amount, you would say, oh, you're stupid. We don't have the same amount. He's got the tall glass. And you might never solve the issue, right? Yes, that is one of the best examples ever of the problems of humanity, that they are in a very childish state where they're still fighting over who has more truth because they have different shapes to their containers. And so they will still agree to disagree, and this leads to a lot of confusion because even though they agree to disagree, they don't keep their agreement because they can even agree on a false reality. And so the problem with agreeing to disagree is that if you really truly agree to disagree and you therefore agree after that, then you have broken your promise because you've already agreed to disagree and you're not trustworthy. And so all of this leads to confusion and hypocrisy. Whereas if you agree to agree, then you will keep trying to figure it out until you come to see that everybody is equal and everything is true because everything that is true is reality. And the things that are not true are not a reality. And so they just don't exist, you see. They don't exist because they're not true. And therefore, if you trust on something that doesn't exist, you become the one that doesn't exist. You must eventually become the one who goes away because you can't stay in reality if you can't trust on reality because you're a part of reality and therefore you don't trust on yourself. You don't trust that you have a right hand and a left hand. You don't trust that God designed the human body in such a way, as you say, Stephanie, that it can sit, that the spine is designed in such a way that you can bend right at the hips and sit. What if the spine went down between your legs? Then it would be hard to sit. And you have been talking to us about how the body is self-healing, you see, that you have a toenail that was damaged and you didn't even realize it, but gradually another toenail was forming under it. So now you have one damaged toenail on top of the other, and it's still getting ready to fall off as the other toenail has formed underneath it. So the top layer, the old toenail, has separated on one side and is still connected on the other side. So you have a band-aid around it to hold it on until it's ready to fall off. And that is an example of the incredible ability of the human body to function in a way that says God knows the way. God knows the way. And so the more you trust on the body as a whole, as a very, very powerful instrument, the less attached you are to a particular version of it. You see, you begin to see that it's not necessarily the shape of the container. It is the truth that is contained within it. And so, a person who has a very unappealing exterior in the popular view, and people don't think they're very attractive, could contain more access to the truth than all those who are judging him or her, you see. And so you gradually find the places inside of you where you don't agree to agree, because you've already agreed to agree. And so if there are things inside of you, places where you and another have a different point of view, you can gradually try to understand the underlying principle, because there are patterns to life. There are principles that govern reality, because the design is very, very, very complex, profound, and true. And so to find the truth is to search for the underlying patterns, you see. Right. Okay, thank you, Thomas. By the way, where have you been? Made a new vibration when I heard about the fact that you were turning the page into a new chapter, and I said, well, I need to go away and replay my own experiences in the old chapters so that I can make sure that I don't drag that old tale along with me, because I want to be in the community with a new point of view, because I agree to agree with you. I agree to agree with you, Stephanie, and you agree to agree with me. And therefore, we keep learning. We keep learning. We keep growing. We keep seeking out an understanding of the principles and the patterns that underlie our experience, you see. And so, if we're standing on opposite sides of the tree and there's a bird nest that I can see, but you cannot see it, it doesn't mean that we have to disagree, because we can agree that there has to be consistency in the patterns, you see, that it could be possible that there could be something that blocks your view so that you can't see what is evident to me. And so we have to keep trying to find the blockages, you see, so that we can understand the problem. And so if you say, that's impossible, Thomas, there cannot be a bird in the tree, then you might never know how beautiful a bird can be when it alights on a tree and when it brings a worm to feed its young, you see? And this is something you will miss out on. But if you say, Thomas, I can't see what you see, something blocks my way, can you help me see what it is you see? Or help me to figure out how to walk around the tree and see what you see, so that I can experience it too, then we agree to agree. Even though we don't see the same thing, we agree that we both have the capacity to experience reality. And therefore, if I see a bird in the tree, then it's a possibility that you would see it too if you stood where I stand. And so you don't just deny my reality, you seek to understand the underlying platform or concept that would keep us from seeing the same thing and experiencing the same thing. And so you would say, there are certain things that prevent me from being able to see the other side of the tree. So how do I solve that problem? How do I solve that problem? Well, I could have Thomas take a picture and send it to me, or I could have him try to explain it to me and try to understand how that could be. Or I could just pick up my feet and walk around the tree and stand beside him and say, oh, I see it too. I see it too. However, if you're the one that sees the bird in the tree and you say you're stupid because you can't see what I can see, then you are blocked in your reality because you also can't see the other side of the tree and you don't know what the other person might see. And the other person might see no bird, but they might see a squirrel. And they might say, there's a squirrel here. And you would say, that's not true, it's a bird. And so until you can understand that one has a fluffy tail and one has wings and can fly, and they're not the same, you see, they're not the same container, but they both contain the truth, you see, because there are many versions of the pattern of life, you see. And so I agree with you, Steph, that it's not a good idea to enter into an agreement to disagree, because that is like saying you cut off your nose to spite your face. So don't cut off your nose to spite your face and just say, I agree to agree. And if you agree to agree, then we're in agreement, you see, and we can talk about our reality. But if you say, I will not agree to disagree, I only agree to agree, and the other person says, well, you're stupid, you see, then they are fulfilling their trust on agreeing to disagree, that they cannot agree with you, that it's better to agree than to agree to disagree, because they already have committed themselves to a path, you see. And it doesn't mean they can't grow and they can't say, now I know why things don't work out for me, because I'm always disagreeing with others, you see, because I already made a promise that I would always agree to disagree. And now I see how stupid that is, because someone refused to agree with me, to disagree. Somebody said, I will not do that. And therefore, how could I have an agreement with that person to disagree if they say I will not do that? If they say I will only agree to agree, I either have to let them be free from my reality, or I have to come to see that if we can agree to agree, then we can share the same world, you see. Then we can share the same world in peace and harmony. But if we agree to disagree, we'll just get out our guns and kill the Huns, and the Huns will say, why did you kill me today? And we will say, because you disagree with me. You disagree with me, my dear. So I have to kill you because we agreed that we would disagree, and I can't disagree that I agreed to disagree. So I'm so confused that I don't know who I am anymore. And so I just got to start shooting randomly to kill everything I see because it doesn't agree with me. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you again. You're welcome, dear.